Starbound. My name is Aaron, one of the Starbound narrators. If you enjoy human-created HFY stories and you'd like to support us, we're now on Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to brand new stories that you can't hear anywhere else. All the links are in the description. Now let's get into it. The blow was clean, unhurried, and delivered without breaking stride. I was looking right at Maya when it happened. She had been pointing at the observation window on the far side of the promenade, the one with the unobstructed view of the docking ring, and she turned back to tell me something and walked straight into the sub-commander without looking. The collision did not register on the Keldari officer. She was tall, broad-shouldered, armored in dark gray service uniform with the bronze metalwork of her commendations catching the station light. She did not stop. She did not look down. She simply corrected, the way you correct a piece of furniture that has inconvenienced you. One sharp strike to Maya's head and kept walking. Maya cried out. Not a scream. A short, shocked sound, the kind a child makes when pain arrives without warning. I noted the time. 14:32 hours, station standard. I noted the rank insignia at the officer's collar, sub-commander. The unit markings on her left shoulder, a designation I didn't recognize but could look up. The direction of her departure, the rate, the two officers walking with her, both of whom continued without a backward glance. The number of civilians in the immediate area who had witnessed the event and chosen not to see it. Then I picked up my daughter and held her while she cried. "Hey," I said, "I've got you." A lump was already rising where she'd been struck. I checked her pupils. Equal, reactive. Asked if she felt sick. Asked her name. And what we were having for dinner. She answered all three correctly and without hesitation. She would not turn 8 for another 3 months. The sub-commander was a receding figure at the far end of the promenade, the bronze metalwork of her commendations still catching the light. I set Maya down, told her to stay close, and walked after the officer. She was easy to track. The Keldari stood half a head taller than most of the promenade traffic, and her uniform moved through the crowd with the authority of someone who had never once been required to go around. I closed the distance at a steady pace. I wasn't going anywhere else. She had nowhere I didn't know about. The sub-commander did not seem surprised to be addressed. She stopped and turned with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never found anything worth hurrying for, and looked at me with pale blue eyes. That registered about the level of interest she might give a malfunctioning piece of station equipment.
"Tarok," she said. "Sub-commander, your child was not watching where you were going."
"She's not yet 8, I said.
"The young must learn."
Her galactic standard was immaculate, the cadence of someone who has been educated to a high standard.
"The correction was appropriate. You should be grateful it came from a sub-commander and not a recruit."
I looked at her for a moment. The file in my head was neat and ordered. The time, the rank, the insignia, the unit designation, the location, the nature of the strike, the age of the child. "This isn't over," I said. Tarok's expression did not change. She turned and walked away. The station adjudicator's office was in the Keldari sector, which told me something before I had said a word. The liaison officer was professional and deliberate, his uniform pressed to a standard that understood the weight of appearance. He listened to my account without interruption, which I took as a professional courtesy, rather than any indication of sympathy. And then he folded his hands on the desk and told me the matter was closed.
"Sub-Commander Tarok's actions were consistent with Keldari disciplinary custom," he said. "Physical correction of the young is not considered an aggressive act under our code. It is a form of instruction."
"My daughter is not Keldari."
"No, and that cultural gap is regrettable."
He reached into his desk and produced a document, already printed, already stamped.
"Formal acknowledgement of the incident has been entered into the record. An apology, offered on behalf of Sub-Commander Tarok's command, is attached. We consider the matter resolved."
I took the document and read it. The language was designed to be final, the vocabulary of closure, the grammar of a door being shut. The apology was worded as an expression of cultural goodwill, rather than an admission of anything actionable. It had been written before I arrived. Someone had known I was coming and had decided before I walked in exactly what I would receive. "I'm requesting formal sanction," I said.
"That request is denied."
He said it with the tone of a man delivering a decision already made above him. Professional regret in measured doses.
"You should teach your offspring how to show more respect, Mr. Miller. The honor of the apology is sufficient."
I read the document one more time, all the way through. Then I set it on his desk, stood up, and left. Maya was asleep by 2100 hours. I sat at the kitchen table for a while after I'd checked on her, in the quiet of the quarters with the station hum coming through the walls, and the anger cooling the way it cools when you let it. Not fighting it, just watching it settle into something more useful. I've worked with anger before. The ones who act on it directly don't last long in my field. The ones who know how to wait do. My name is David Miller. I'm a senior forensic auditor, currently contracted to the Station Commercial Oversight Authority on a 3-year secondment. My job is to find lies buried in data. Specifically, financial misrepresentations, fraudulent claims, falsified records. I do it by reading documents, cross-referencing figures, and identifying the places where what someone says happened and what the numbers say happened don't align. I have been doing this for 19 years. The liaison officer had called it a cultural gap. I opened my personal terminal. The Caldari Public Records System was not difficult to find. It was, in fact, aggressively accessible. A database of commendations, after-action reports, battle honors, fleet deployments, and logistics records stretching back several hundred years, published in full and maintained with the obsessive pride of a culture that treated its military history as sacred testimony. I scrolled through it for a few minutes, getting the shape of the thing. An auditor learns to read a database before he reads any individual record within it. You want to understand the structure, the categories, where things are filed and why, what the culture of the record keeper tells you about what they thought was worth keeping. What I understood, in about 3 minutes, was this. The Caldari didn't just publish their commendations. They published everything. After-action reports with full tactical breakdowns, ordnance expenditure, itemized by weapon type and engagement phase, supply manifests, fleet positioning, the complete logistics of every celebrated engagement, available to anyone with a terminal and the patience to look. Their formal process for raising an honor challenge was in there too. 3 pages. I read it twice. Because partial accounting would be dishonorable. Because a record that omitted the supply chain would be suggesting there was something about the supply chain worth hiding. And the Caldari did not hide things. They had built a database of their entire military history and made it public, out of pride. And it had apparently never once occurred to them that this was an open ledger. I recognized an open ledger. I had spent my career waiting for people to hand me one. I typed Subcommander Tarok's name into the search field. Her service record filled the screen. 22 years of decorated service. 12 commendations. 4 unit citations. I read through it with the flat attention I bring to any new file, not looking for anything specific yet, letting the shape of the record settle. Then I opened a new document, dated and logged it, and began. "Claim filed," I said to no one. "Commencing audit." The next 4 days were not exciting. They were not meant to be. That is the thing about this work that nobody outside the field understands. There are no flashes of inspiration. There is no moment where the answer arrives whole. There is only the data, and the cross-referencing, and the slow building of a picture one verified figure at a time. I pulled ordnance records and checked them against after-action reports. I pulled deployment manifests and checked them against fleet positioning logs. I built a timeline of Tarok's service, engagement by engagement, and went through it the way you go through any set of accounts, looking for the places where the columns don't balance. I was not hacking anything. Every document I opened was publicly available on the Caldari's own system, published by them, maintained by them, accessible to anyone. The irony of that was a fact I noted and filed, the same way I note and file any relevant contextual detail. It did not make me smile. It was simply the nature of the ledger. On the afternoon of the 4th day, I focused on the Star of Valor. It was Tarok's highest commendation, awarded for actions at the Battle of the Kira Nebula 12 years prior. I pulled the full after-action report, a detailed account of the engagement running to 31 pages, and read it through once. Then I pulled the published ordnance logistics for her vessel during that engagement and opened them alongside it. The after-action report stated that her vessel had expended 84 Sun-Lance torpedoes over the course of the battle. The published armory manifest for her vessel showed that it had loaded 72. 12 torpedoes. A small discrepancy. A vainglorious exaggeration, most likely entered at the reporting stage by someone who thought the record would never be checked. Because who would check it? Because the Caldari published their records themselves, and nobody audits a culture that considers honesty a form of armor. I highlighted the 2 figures. I noted the source documents. I saved the file. The hearing chamber was in the Caldari command wing, which meant passing through 3 security checkpoints and presenting my civilian contractor credentials at each one. The guards at the final checkpoint looked at my credentials, looked at me, and then looked at my credentials again. I waited. They let me through. Legate Hesh was already seated when I entered. He was broad and angular, his uniform heavy with the bronze of his battle honors, arranged with a formality that told me this was not a room he used for routine matters. 2 senior officers flanked him. All 3 of them looked at me the way people look at something that has wandered into the wrong place.
"You have filed a request,"
Hesh said.
"for a hearing on an honor claim discrepancy."
"That's correct."
"You are a civilian contractor."
"Also correct." He waited, apparently expecting me to feel the weight of that. I let the silence run its course. Then, I set my data slates on the table and arranged them in order. The commendation for the Battle of Sierra Nebula, the after-action report, the published armory manifest. The commendation states that Subcommander Tarok's vessel expended 84 Sun-Lance torpedoes at the Battle of the Sierra Nebula, I said. The published armory manifest for her vessel records that it loaded 72. I have cross-referenced both documents against the Caldari Public Records System. All sources are your own publications. Hesh looked at the slates. He did not touch them.
"You are a man with a grievance,"
he said.
"and you have fabricated a discrepancy to pursue it."
I said nothing.
"These figures will have been transposed in translation. A clerical variance. We do not conduct formal hearings on the basis of civilian complaints dressed in the language of honor."
I said nothing. He held my gaze for a moment, then turned to the officer on his left.
"Verify."
The officer moved to a console at the side of the chamber and began working through it. The room was quiet. I watched Hesh. His expression was the fixed neutrality of a man who had already decided the outcome and was waiting for the record to confirm it. It took 4 minutes. The officer looked up from the console. Whatever color his skin had held when I walked in had gone. He gave the slightest nod. I watched the change move across Hesh's face, the fixed neutrality first, then something that was not quite disbelief, because disbelief implies the possibility had not occurred to you, and I thought it probably had occurred to Hesh somewhere in those 4 minutes, that the civilian was not bluffing, then the disbelief anyway, just for a moment. Then a cold fury that settled into his features like stone. He looked at me for a long time.
"Your audit is accepted,"
he said. His voice was entirely level. That was, somehow, worse than anger would have been.
"The debt will be paid. You may go."
I collected my data slates, one by one. I aligned them. I put them in my bag. Then I walked out of the Caldari command wing and back into the station. Maya was at the viewport when I came back for her, watching the docking ring the way she'd been watching it the day this started. She turned when she heard me coming and studied my face the way children study faces when they're trying to determine if the news is good or bad.
"Did it work?"
she asked. "We'll know shortly," I said. We stood at the viewport together. and watched the traffic move through the docking ring. Freighters and transports and the distant running lights of ships I couldn't identify from here. Maya leaned against my arm. The station hummed its low, constant hum. The public address system chimed. The voice that followed was formal Keldari, broadcast station-wide, and it spoke for a little under a minute. I understood enough to follow the shape of it before the auto-translation caught up. A review of service records, a finding of breach, the specific articles of the Keldari Code of Honor cited one by one, and then the sentence, delivered in the flat, procedural tone of a culture that had understood, long before this moment, that the worst punishment it could give was not pain, but erasure. The individual formerly known as Sub-Commander Tarok had been found in breach of the Code of Honor. Her name, rank, and all associated titles were declared void and expunged from all records, effective immediately. The address ended. The station returned to its ordinary noise. Maya thought about this for a moment.
What does expunged mean?
She asked. I looked down at her. The anger that had sat in my chest for 4 days had gone, and what was left in its place was something quieter, and, I thought, better. It means the books are balanced, I said.
भगवान ने सारी औरतां नो टाइम लगाकर बड़ा खूबसूरत बनाया, फिर घर के काम करने की भी हुनर दिए, फिर सारी औरतां के नैन नक्श भी बड़े सोने सोने दिए और एक प्यार करने वाला दिल भी दिया, फिर लास्ट में इतनी लंबी जबान देकर सारे करे कराए पानी भी फेर दिया।